God, Fee is always right. Rule number 2, if Fee is wrong, refer back to rule number 1. So let's talk about this. We're going to have Mark Sloboda on the show for a little bit. Mark is going to have a busy day that World War III is possibly on the brink. Breaking news, we probably heard a lot of people say that Iran has targeted certain bases in Iraq and hit them with tens of missiles. Right now, we have no reported deaths, no casualties, but we should wait on that and see what happens when the smoke clears tomorrow. Fam, you had a video out there. It's got a lot of likes on it right away. It's got a lot of views. You have a theory, and it's very much, I think, kind of in line with the gray zone a little bit. Even I called Niko today to disagree with him. Not that I know exactly what's going on. I think this situation is murky as can be. It is... we don't know shit, is what I think, personally, because there's so much going on. But why don't you explain your theory, and then I will go into my theory before we get... And as soon as Mark comes on, we're going to jump on with Mark Sloboda.
Yeah. Well, basically, I believe the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And basically, my belief is that Israel is heavily, heavily involved in this. In fact, I believe that there could be ties to not only our CIA, our Pentagon, our military-industrial complex, but Israel's CIA military-industrial complex. And the reason I think this is because I explained it in that video. Mossad, absolutely. Because Israel and Netanyahu have been dying to go to war with Iran. They've been absolutely set on starting war with Iran. We gave them the green light to do so. And when I heard that the Prime Minister of Iraq was on the phone with Donald Trump and was speaking to him about the peace brokering, which he described it as peace brokering. Max Blumenthal of the Gray Zone did a whole great article on it. Basically, he was talking about easing tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran, with Iraq as the mediator. But what I really want to get to is how Israel is involved. Because to me, what I think is that Israel and the United States are actually weak right now, in the sense that Iran has been prepping for this for a very long time. We have been after Iran for such a long time, and Iran has prepped themselves to hold off against the United States. They are very patriotic right now. We're seeing close to 1 million people in the streets mourning the loss of Soleimani, and they are ready to stand firm against U.S. imperialism. 100%. What the United States and Israel have are armies and military forces, and that would seem like an advantage. But let me just go over exactly how I think this is playing out, because in my opinion, and Mint Press News did a great article on it. If you want to go to it, Johnny, and just kind of show them, Iran has the upper hand. Like I said, they've been prepping for this. They have logistics on their side. And I'm going to quote this part from Mint Press. Both Israel and the United States are terrified of an all-out war with Iran. Neither country has faced a well-organized, well-armed, well-trained, and motivated military force in many decades. There can be no doubt that the military leaders of both countries know this and appreciate that a war with Iran will be tantamount to suicide. And then, while both the U.S. and Israeli armies have the military behind them, both are large and cumbersome, and while they can car bomb and, quote, destroy almost any country from the air and sea, neither, for a long time, has been able to fight a long ground war, and they're not really capable right now. If we're looking at our economy, we're in the middle of an election year. The United States isn't really equipped right now to go into war, and I think the American people know that. And further, I want to just finish up with that. The Israeli soldiers or U.S. forces can possibly be expected to be motivated, just like the Iranian military is, based on the years that they've been pretty much subjected to attacks from Israel and the United States, both, and Saudi Arabia for that matter. But I for sure think that Israel is far more involved. And another thing, Israel Israeli big honcho Netanyahu was also indicted, just like Donald Trump has been impeached here in the United States. Those are two weak leaders that are very vulnerable, and they seem to be grasping for power. Did you want to say something?
You're saying the United States isn't ready for war?
No, I don't think we are. I'm not saying we're always going to be ready. We have a military, but we're not in the best place to go to war right now.
Listen, on that theory, I kind of agree with Fiorella over here when it comes to as far as, what even Tulsi Gabbard has said. It's make the Iraqi war look like a picnic. If we get into a war with Iran, it's devastating. It's not going to be good. The terrain in Iran, the way it looks, it's very mountainy. It's not like Saudi Arabia, which is very duny. And there's a lot of things they can do. The Strait of Hormuz. As far as, the Millennial 2000 showed a lot. We showed that months ago about how Iran would defeat the United States in a war. So, yes. Did you have something else to go on to before I go on to Soleimani real quick? Because I want to think.
So from the Mint Press News, there's this passage. It says, notably, the assassination of Soleimani comes just a few months after an alleged Israeli attempt to kill the Iranian general failed and amid a well-documented and decades-long push by U.S. neoconservatives and Israeli officials for a U.S.-led war with Iran.
Yeah. Right. I'm 100% in agreement with that. And another strategy that it seems to me that we're doing is the hit and run strategy, which is we're going to hit them and then we're going to run away and then we're going to see where that goes. And we targeted their general, but this is where I think we disagree, Pasta, is like they are targeting bases. They're not targeting people. And I think that's why we haven't seen any casualties. And no casualties, I believe, is expected. The Gray Zone had another great article today. Hezbollah leader, who is thought to be working in coalition with Iran, said that any harms to U.S. civilians will only serve Trump's agenda. He's the Lebanese Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, and he's a major ally of Iran. And he basically said our goal in the resistance axis has to be the following: the expulsion of the American military forces from our region. All they want to do is get rid of us. They don't want us in there. Yeah. I don't think they want to kill a United States elected, even though that would be the fair thing to do. They're not going to do that. They're after our money. After all we care are about our resources. We don't really care about the blood spilled. So this is the part to me where everything just looks so fishy. You know what I'm saying? It just smells like, I'm saying, when I was talking to people listening to where the retaliation would be, if we're not going to hit it, if Iran was going to choose not to hit any civilians, any military, well, they're not civilians, any civilians or military personnel, then they should use a target of serious significance. I thought, one of my friends told me that they think they might hit a desalination plant in Saudi Arabia because that would be very crippling.
Well, they already did.
Well,
let me show you this clip that CNN played real quick.
Go ahead.
Where they confirmed that there was no casualties.
Iranians. Now, the reason we're showing this picture on the air here is when the Iranians attacked those Saudi oil facilities a number of weeks back, those attacks were extremely precise. I mean, to use a football term, they dropped a dime on exactly the facilities they had to hit there to disable them. That gives you some indication that Iran has the capability to target and may very well have used similar capabilities in this attack to target the base where the Soleimani operation came from, but deliberately not hit U.S. forces there. And I can tell you that the posture in the Pentagon tonight, and of course this could change, the president could change his mind or receive new information, but the posture in the Pentagon tonight is to wait to see if this was the extent of Iran's response to the Soleimani killing, and if so, then react. And if it is limited to this, it gives the U.S. the option at least not to escalate further.
As you were speaking there, Jim, I got some new information that is coming in, and it says an Iraqi security official says no casualties at Iraqi bases. Iraqi security officials are now telling CNN there are no casualties among Iraqi security forces following the attacks on the Al-Assad air base in Anbar province and the attacks in Erbil. This is updated information from the security officials following the initial assessment earlier Wednesday. An Iraqi security source told CNN there were casualties among the Iraqis.
So that would show you.
Yeah, they're strategic and targeted. That's part of their upper hand in this situation.
Yeah.
And they're willing to fight.
Yeah. Me personally, I'm not buying it. I'm just not. I don't know what's coming out there.
Based on what?
based on the fact that they should hit something of significance. And the fact that the media already has these pictures and whatnot, and it's out there that quickly, it's like they were fed this stuff.
Okay, the pictures were from an oil rig, an Saudi oil rig that apparently Iran hit earlier.
Well, that was the whole question and that's where my theory comes into play when you talk about Soleimani and who Soleimani is. And once again, when we're talking about this, I think a lot of people in the mainstream media keep on talking today before these attacks about is Soleimani evil or not. And I thought that was just a wasted comment, a wasted discussion. We can talk about that some more, whatnot. We might have disagreements or agreements. A lot of independent media is talking about why they killed Soleimani, whatnot. And I think that's a little bit deeper. And I'm very proud of independent media going a step further than the mainstream media. But I think at the end of the day, we never talk about why we're still in this region and why our foreign policy to Iran is still the way it is. Whether you like Donald Trump or not, or whether you support him on these moves or not, it's obvious now that he's a player in this game and he's going to go along whatever the plan is that we don't know, and he's a part of it. At this point, we have two choices moving forward, and that is Tulsi and Bernie. And I don't mean to bring it to electoral politics, but this is the seriousness of it. All right, they wanted to have provisions within that NDAA to remove any money going towards any actions towards Iran. Nancy Pelosi did not stand up and go for these things. The AUMF. I know that's something that's really a lot of the Democrats that are sitting there and they're saying Trump, Trump, Trump. Well, guess what? You voted for the AUMF. Yep. But really quickly, what I just want to stay on when it comes to Soleimani's issue, what I really thought was that being a fact that he was a big player with all these militias, we talk about the Houthis hitting these Saudi oil plants. The elites have so much money invested in Saudi Aramco that I don't think in any way, shape, or form, especially the Saudi government, because I believe they are just an extension of the United States, would ever enter into some serious peace negotiations with Iran at this point. That is just my personal belief. There might have been talks about what to do with the militias in the area, but I'm not buying the fact that Iran and Saudi Arabia was ready to sit down, especially with all the money invested into Saudi Arabia with the elites and these oil companies. In fact, I think Soleimani had a lot to say when it came to arming of these militias, and he helped the Houthis hit those oil plants. So this was a mafia-style hit to say, okay, you want to take it to the next level? Now we got to whack this guy for sure. That is my personal belief, and I'm sticking by it right now. But once again, as facts come in and things start changing, I don't know what to think. So,
I just don't necessarily believe that the Saudis necessarily wanted peace. They were just looking at their options. I don't have any reason not to believe the Iraqi prime minister saying that while they were having this meeting, this man was assassinated. I believe that Israel and the United States are complicit and knew what was happening, that this guy was set up, and that this happened because the United States and Israel are threatened by Iran's almost fearlessness. And I disagree with you. I think the Saudi Arabians are dependent on the United States. They're dependent on us for everything. And I think they're in a vulnerable position where they're seeing that compared to Iran, the power that Iran has now, they're a much more democratic state than we're giving them credit for. It doesn't make any sense. We say that they're not democratic. We say that they're under a dictatorship. At the same time, we say that we need we say we need to help them, but at the same time we also say that they're this mighty eminent threat and that we need to knock them down. Yeah. So which is it? It can't be both. It can't be both. You have to choose whether you think Iran is this giant threat or that they're not. And I firmly believe that they're a giant threat to us because they do not respond to our imperialism. They want to be completely independent of U.S. imperialism. Yeah. They have had anti-U.S. imperialist marches. They have democratically elected their leaders. The Soleimani, if you want to talk about where his origin is and where the gentleman from Iraq, who was also killed in coalition with him, they are really responsible for getting rid of these terrorist groups that we funded and created in ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So I don't really see how this isn't something that is flat out strictly the United States Pentagon, the United States CIA, and of course the Israeli intelligence. I 100% see them behind this.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, that we don't know. I don't think personally. It just seems it's very, very murky.
So who do you
best.
think is responsible?
What do you mean?
Your
I
personal
mean,
opinion.
it could. It's the elites. I mean, I don't want to point out anybody in particular, but you're talking about all these people who have all this money invested in Saudi Arabia. Like I said, when these attacks did happen on these oil refineries, I thought there would be a situation where we're going to see more of an uprising in Saudi Arabia because they had their own uprising where Donald Trump, really profited, and the elites profited from MBS winning over the power at the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia. I just don't believe that they would cut. They're going to sink or swim with Donald Trump. So that's why I don't think they're going to enter into serious negotiations with the Iranians for peace talks. But at the same time, after that hit, I think that the Saudis realized that they are vulnerable. So yes, at one point there might be a back door for peace talks with them. But like I said, Soleimani in that region, and the argument is he bad, is he good, whatnot, and I said he's a victim. There's only victims. There's no heroes, right? We can say he's a hero. He took on ISIS. He took on Al Qaeda. But what methods did he use? He was running militias in these countries.
To get people out of there who shouldn't have been there in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are also probably local militias that live there that just didn't want to join up. That he probably had to kill or assassinate. And the way he armed people, they did kill probably American personnel. I don't have access to that data and stuff like that. But once again, it's our presence there. We created Soleimani, and that's something that we're not talking about.
Well, we allowed him to have a reason to exist because he's fighting the very terrorists that we created.
Yes.
So how can we... I'm not going to blame Iranians for attacking the United States. I'm not going to do that because the people who are at fault are Donald Trump and all those Democrats that voted for his military budget, that voted to remove, to give him the power to completely go after Iran. That helped him get rid of the Iran nuclear deal, that helped him get rid of the NDAA. And I 100% am under the belief that this is, you say it's the elites. Absolutely, it's the elites. But the elites in what? In our military industrial complex. I 100%, they had every motivation to go after this guy because this guy was becoming too strong and too beloved by many people in the Middle East, not just in his country, but in the surrounding areas where he was helping the Houthis and he was helping the other minorities.
Yeah. Well, real quick, fams, let's talk facts real quick. Okay, so January, what was it, 3rd, 4th? Soleimani was assassinated.
Yeah, yes. 3rd.
Okay, and it was from a missile from an Iraqi base.
Mm-hmm.
Today,
a drone taken off from an Iraqi base.
It was a drone.
Yes. Okay, so today, about an hour ago, Iran retaliated by launching ballistic missiles at an Iraqi/U.S. base that had U.S. personnel in it.
Yeah.
And according to the CNN reporter that I watched, let's watch this real quick. They got notification before.
Breaking news, Iran firing more than a dozen missiles at 2 Iraqi bases housing U.S. troops. Ryan Brown is at the Pentagon, and we have some new information about the missile attack tonight. Ryan, we're learning more about the moments before the missiles struck at the Al-Assad Air Base outside Baghdad. What do you know?
Well, that's right, Don. An official telling CNN that there was some warning given to forces at that base prior to the missiles striking the base, so that they had some time to kind of get to their bunkers, get to their shelters prior to the missiles landing, as it were. Though we are being told that the missiles struck in areas that were not populated by U.S. forces. So U.S. officials telling us that initial assessments that there were no U.S. casualties. And a big part of that may have been that they had this advanced warning. So while forces have been on high alert, having that advanced warning likely saved lives.
They had an advanced warning?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, on Twitter, you go and you see what Javad Zarif, which is one of the Iranian, I think he's a parliamentary member. He says, Iran took and concluded proportionate measures in self-defense under Article 51 of UN Charter targeting base from which cowardly armed attacks against our citizens and senior officials were launched. This is the base that they attacked Soleimani from.
Yeah.
So it is, going back to your point before, Paso, you said they wanted to target something of value.
Yeah.
Targeting the base of where they attacked their war hero from is of value.
We do not seek. It's like symbolism of sorts.
We do not seek escalation in war, but will defend ourselves against any aggression.
And that's multiple people are.
And this is the concluded proportionate measures, they said. So it looks like they're not going to attack anymore.
They're not. That's not their aim. Their goal isn't to kill people. Like multiple people have said that's not their goal. Their goal is to go after symbolically what affects us and also our money. They're not trying to start World War III here. And they know they would be willing to defend themselves, though. And I think that's their point. They are not seeing themselves as succumbing to Donald Trump's methods or America's methods because they see us as imperialists. So it would be hypocritical of them to succumb to our own methods.
I think that, for me personally, it would have been more of a more strategical target. I mean, I understand what they're saying right there, but to me, that's like kind of symbolism. We're going to hit you where this particular thing took off. They'd do more damage if they hit something of more significance without killing people. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. To me, it makes me question when Donald Trump bombed the Syrian air base after the last chemical weapon attack by Assad that was proven wrong. There were no deaths. There were no casualties. So I just pause for a second. I sit back and let me see what's happening. I'm going to see more in the next coming days what does happen. Is this going to be the only attack? Are we going to see more? I'm very anxious to get on with Mark Sloboda and think where we're going to go from here. So, but to me, it does still seem a little bit fishy out there. I don't know what to believe just yet. Yeah. Also, by the way, a Ukrainian airliner went down in Iran. We're still waiting to hear more on it.
In Tehran,
it went down in Tehran, and they said that.
No, this is just right after.
It says that it was reported the crash was due to technical difficulties. Supposedly, yeah. I don't buy that.
I don't buy.
I don't buy that.
I'm not buying that. It was. I mean,
it was a Ukrainian plane, though. So
someone in the chat said there was a no-fly zone. I mean, in the times of war, of course, there's going to be no-fly zone. But the other question is, were other flights leaving? Also,
Yeah, that one's still up for debate, but that seems a little fishy to me. I mean, I don't know. I think ultimately what's happening here is we are trying to hold on to this power in the Middle East, and it's interesting because this has happened time and time again. Every empire that has gone into that area has failed. Rome was one of them that was trying to fight a war in this area, and then they freaking collapsed as an empire. It's really interesting. It is a very difficult area for most people to gain control in, but especially the United States right now. I feel we're a lot more vulnerable than a lot of people think we are. We might have the biggest and largest military in the world. We might have nuclear weapons of mass destruction, but I think we have a very vulnerable people, and we are sinking economically as an empire. So how's the Iranian leader? Do you go and sell the fact that you hit a base but there were no lives and whatnot, or just like, oh, we just hit part of a base? I mean, is that like a fair retaliation? I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think that. Are you advocating for? No, I'm not. But I mean, I would assume that if you're going to take out one of their top leaders and their general, that they're going to want true. I mean, do you think that they're? And I'm not saying there's a thirst for blood, but I would assume that they would want something more serious. That would be an emotional reactionary response, and I feel like these people are more strategic and more pragmatic in their moves. Like I said, Donald Trump and the military-industrial complex's move was very stupid, in my opinion. It was very reactionary to go and target somebody like that. If you respond with the same reactionary move, it's just going to create a mess. This is like playing chess, and I feel like they're being very strategic and into what moves they're putting out. So I 100% by what's happening right now. What I think is that the Pentagon, CIA, whatever, they went and assassinated Soleimani. Either with the help of Israel or not, they assassinated Soleimani. And then I don't doubt that. And then Trump had decisions to make. He had either to own it or be like, oh, I don't have control of my government. Right. So he had to own it. And he owned it. And he's an asshole for owning it, and he's a fucking piece of shit. Everything, of course, and he's an asshole for he's putting out the tweet for the 52 cultural sites. He has spooks like Pompeo and his administration. That alone is like. I think. But then what Niko was saying is that someone tried to broker a. Well, they were talking about what were they really going there to meet? What were they going to talk about as far as possible peace, whatnot? We don't know exactly where that
piece was talking, I still think they were kind of talking about the militias in the area because they're very, there's some Sunni, there's some Shia, and they fail to realize that when we took down Saddam Hussein, that the Shias took leadership. Now that's, primarily Iran are full of Shias. So, Soleimani had a lot of control of these militias that were inside Iraq, and he had a lot of control. I personally think that Donald Trump doesn't want war with Iran, but he wanted to make a point and look strong, and Soleimani was that person to look strong on, especially after the Houthis attacked the Saudi Arabian oil. So for me, it was like, okay, well, who can we whack that will make me look, presidential and strong without committing to a war where we're going to send kids home in a body bag and I'll definitely lose the election. To me, he was trying to do it to get reelected. But here's the thing, fam. I think it backfired.
Absolutely
I think it backfired and it screwed him.
It absolutely backfired. That's what I mean by it was a stupid move, whether it was Trump. I mean, he's complicit by going along with it, like Jonathan said, but I don't necessarily think he thought about this by himself. I 100% agree that I think I think Israel was involved. I also think people like Pompeo were pushing this, people in the military-industrial complex. And what it has done is it has built solidarity between Iraq and Iran. They've had their tensions before, but after this attack, they have literally built a people's solidarity against U.S. imperialism between Iran and Iraq.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we will have Mark Sloboda back on when we come back on.
Just really quick, Super Chat contribution says, check out the Saker.is from Nazcalito, Glory Jones. We would not beat Iran. They're still rational, though. And over on the Convo Couch YouTube, we had one real quick. We'll get you out of here. Manny, he says, those planes that have been crashing worldwide was a 737.
Yeah, 737. Yeah, and those planes have been failing.
Going down like a lot. So we don't know what's going on, but let's just wait and find out.
Okay, so
we'll be right on back.
We're going to stay alive, okay?
Gotcha. Welcome back to the Convo Couch, ladies and gentlemen. We are here with Mark Sloboda. How you doing today, Mark?
I'm alive. Pasta, how are you?
I'm glad you're alive, but with that being said, World War III looks like it might be starting, right? Why don't you give us a little analogy of what you think is going on and what to expect from here?
Okay, well, first of all, World War III is not starting and has no possibility of starting.
Good.
Hate to rain on your parade there. Even in the event of full-scale war between the U.S. and Iran, I mean full-scale war, because any war with Iran is likely to be restricted to U.S. and allied war on Iran is likely to be restricted to extensive airstrikes, cruise missiles, and proxy troops, right? The MEK, Baluchi irregulars, various terrorist and proxy groups that the U.S. keeps in Albania on the fringes of Iran and is constantly stirring up, to cause problems for Iran. But altogether, it can cause significant damage to Iran. There's no question there. But by and large, any odds that the Iranian government would survive such an attack and continue. The political system of Iran would continue despite the damage. The only way for that not to be the case would be a U.S. and allied ground invasion of Iran. And that would take some 500,000 to a million U.S. and allied troops landing in Iran. It would take at least 3 to 6 months, if not longer, to organize. We would all see it happening. It's not even clear that the U.S. actually has that type of amphibious landing capability right at the moment. They're currently having some problems there. And that is the only thing. And that is unlikely to happen. But even in the event that happened, it is extremely unlikely that Russia or China would get directly militarily involved. Neither one of them have any type of formal alliance with Iran. It is possible, certainly, that Russia at least would provide military materials, cooperation, intelligence, C4ISR, those types of things. But you're not going to see Russian troops running to the defense of Tehran, and you're not going to see Russian nuclear missiles or Chinese nuclear missiles flying, even if the neocons went full neocon and you saw some type of apocalyptic U.S. invasion of Iran. But all of that is off the table tonight. In fact, we don't see the immediate threat of any type of direct war between the U.S. and Iran. Knock on wood, at least for the moment. We've had after the political assassination of the Iranian general of the Quds, the commander of the Quds force, Qasem Soleimani, and of the Iraqi commander, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, of the Iraqi Popular Mobilization Units. They were killed together. And there were numerous other decapitation airstrikes by the United States at Iraqi Popular Mobilization Units. And the Popular Mobilization Units are often referred to as an Iranian-backed militia in the U.S. press. This is inaccurate. They have been brought in as a formal part of the Iraqi military, of the Iraqi armed forces. They report directly to the Iraqi prime minister. And it is true that they were originally organized by Iran, trained, helped organize by Qasem Soleimani himself to help fight ISIS in Iraq and Syria. But they are their own entity, and they are now official part of the Iraqi military, and they report to the Iraqi prime minister. So although the U.S. definitely killed Qasem Soleimani, this Iranian general, beloved by his country, kind of famous, infamous, depending on your point of view, most of what the U.S. has killed in the last week has been Iraqis. An official military, uniformed military of the Iraqi armed forces, the Popular Mobilization Units. And these were the units that were absolutely instrumental in defeating ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. And even U.S. President Obama admitted as much. And it was just a couple years ago that U.S. media, including NBC, MSNBC, and CNN, were correctly reporting that Qasem Soleimani was helping organize Iraqi resistance against ISIS and was instrumental. They were the ground force, 2/3 of the Iraqi ground force, to defeat ISIS, and were getting direct U.S. air support while they were fighting them. Yeah. This is after the U.S.-trained army was beaten and turned around and fled. And if it had not been for the action of these popular mobilization units, organized by this Iranian special forces, this Quds Force commander, it is very likely that Baghdad would have fallen to ISIS. That's how far ISIS was moving.
What do you make of the Iraqi prime minister's allegations that he was speaking to Donald Trump on the phone and knew about Soleimani going over there to broker peace talks between Saudi Arabia and Iran?
Yeah. Not only has the U.S. assassinated a beloved Iranian general in a third country, Iraq, where the U.S. Has bases and military forces, and a flagrant invasion of their sovereignty, but it appears that they did it while he was on a diplomatic mission. There's all this vague talk used to justify this of an imminent threat, that he was planning to kill American soldiers and they had to act, which, is the existential emergency by which they justify this assassination. They'll never use those words, of course. Right. But none of that appears to be true. They've provided no details, and he was actually on a diplomatic mission. And it appears that the U.S. may have arranged this diplomatic mission where he was shuttling messages to Iraq, and then Iraq was shuttling messages to Saudi Arabia, and it was supposedly part of a de-escalation process between Saudi Arabia and Iran, something that everyone should be glad for. Mm-hmm. But it appears that this might have all been a ruse by the United States to get Soleimani in a place and time where it was convenient for them to kill him, which for some reason they decided was Baghdad International Airport, which is where they did the deed. And again, it wasn't just him. It was an Iraqi commander and several other members of the Iraqi military as well.
Why do you think, sorry.
It goes even further. In the Iraqi prime minister, there are reports that he has also sent a letter to the UN saying he was threatened by Trump, who's promised to remove him and then promised to kill him if he talks about the U.S. Arrangements for killing Soleimani and so on. So there's definitely something very nasty going on here. And just like with the lies told to justify the Iraq war, Libya, the moderate jihadis in Syria, and every other military conflict the U.S. has had in the past decades, there's absolutely zero reason to believe anything that the U.S. government and the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, we lie, cheat, and steal, is saying about what is happening right now. Verify, verify, verify.
So why do you think the U.S. intelligence or Donald Trump wanted to kill Soleimani so bad? What was so alluring to them to get rid of this guy?
Okay, simply he was extremely effective resistance for U.S., Israeli, and Saudi hegemony over the region. There's lots of talk about him as a terrorist, and the U.S. has designated the entire Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. Okay, this is nonsense. It is a complete demonization used to justify, in the end, this killing and to try to economically punish Iran by putting sanctions on the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps. Now, do the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps oppose U.S. interests in the Middle East? Absolutely. Do they oppose Israel and the Israeli occupation of Palestine? Absolutely. Are they a terrorist organization? No, not by any definition, real definition of what a terrorist organization is. Are they committing attacks of political character, attacks directly and intentionally against civilians? No, they are not. They have not. They are not a terrorist organization. Qasem Soleimani, one of the main arguments used to justify his killing is claims that Iran, with him as the principal, provided know-how and parts for improvised explosive devices that were given to the Iraqi resistance during the U.S. invasion and military occupation of that country, their neighbor, which Iran and Iraq had just recently, in living memory of everyone here in involvement, had a terrible, bloody war. So, not exactly the best of friends. That doesn't mean that Iran wanted the U.S. invading Iraq and overthrowing Saddam Hussein either. But, things have actually ended up for Iran's benefit with all of that. But there's absolutely zero evidence to support that. This has been well debunked. It's one of these lies that keep getting repeated. In fact, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, with a whole slew of lies put out on Twitter about Qasem Soleimani, claiming that he was involved with 9/11 somehow.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. Baghdad Bob level propaganda. All right. It's in fact, first of all, Iran and Al Qaeda, just like Iran and ISIS, are opposite divides. Shiite, Sunni Wahhabi on both of these scores. They're bitter blood enemies. And in fact, again, reported in Western mainstream media, Iran and Qasem Soleimani, specifically as the heads of the Quds Force, assisted the U.S. Attack in Afghanistan in 2001. Soleimani had long been leading Iranian forces and Afghani forces, training them up, the Northern Alliance then in Afghanistan, against the Taliban. And when the U.S. went into Afghanistan, Iran assisted. They provide a medium of communication with the Northern Alliance, and they provided some special forces on the ground and intelligence and coordination. Iran actually assisted, and specifically Soleimani, the U.S. Invasion, if you will, of Afghanistan, something which they've probably quite seriously come to regret, as the U.S. has never lived. And that's another, the other border of Iran that has, thousands of U.S. troops right on, another border of theirs other than Iraq. This is Soleimani. He's assisted us against, and was instrumental in defeating ISIS. He's assisted us against Taliban and Al Qaeda. So why did we kill him? Well, because first of all, he opposes Israel. There's no question that he's been training up and supplying Hezbollah in Lebanon, which protects southern Lebanon from Israeli incursions, and opposes the Palestinian, the Israeli occupation and ethnic cleansing of Palestine. And although it's overblown, there is a lot of discussion that Iran has also provided at least some advice and training to the Houthis in Yemen, which overthrew a Saudi-backed puppet and have resisted quite effectively the Saudi invasion and genocidal starvation blockade of their country there. So he's opposing U.S. allies in the region, in the Middle East, in both situations of a quite, depending on your political persuasion, horrific nature. The Israeli occupation, ethnic cleansing of Palestine, Saudi invasion of Yemen, genocidal starvation blockade. Is Soleimani providing local forces, training and assistance to resist U.S. allies in this situation? Is this terrorism? No. Is it opposing U.S. interests and the interests of its strong allies in the region? Absolutely. Now, there's a lot of talk that he's a genocidal mass murderer with blood on his hands. Does he have blood on his hands? Well, yes, in a way. in the same sense that every U.S. JSOC commander has blood on his hands, illegally arming and training, head chopping, suicide bombing Wahhabis to overthrow governments in Syria and Libya. And of course, that's another situation where Soleimani has been instrumental, not only in defeating ISIS, but defeating, U.S.-backed Islamist proxies, now backed by Turkey, in Syria. These are sectarian Islamist and jihadist militants, illegally armed, trained, and salaried by the Obama administration that were literally allied and embedded, still are, with Al-Qaeda, and were allied with ISIS before they were against them in the beginning of the war.
And just to finish up, sorry to interrupt you, just to finish up, I know you have to go. Does this actually help or hinder Donald Trump, do you think?
Politically in the U.S., that's tough to say. We all know he's tweeted enough in the past against President Obama for blaming him for failing at negotiations and trying to start a war with Iran to get reelected. It's tough to say whether if he actually started a war with Iran, whether that would help his election results or not. I can't really judge that at the moment. It's not clear. Certainly, it's not turning off his base at all. Would it have a rally around the flag effect for some independents and a lot of people in the U.S. who just hate Iran? I don't know. But it's certainly hurting U.S. national security interests. It's threatening to get the U.S. kicked out of Iraq now because the U.S. has flagrantly violated Iraqi sovereignty and security with these airstrikes against, again, Iraqi military units that they say are aligned with Iran. I have the wrong political persuasion. So there's a movement in Iraq. The Iraqi parliament has actually passed a resolution demanding that the U.S. leave Iraq. Now, this is something that is a non-binding resolution passed on to the caretaker prime minister. And it had no support from Sunnis or Kurds within the country. One of the results of all of this, the U.S. is right now refusing to leave Iraq. They're going to be attacked by, those in Iraq who are angry that their own military forces have been targeted and that the U.S. is refusing to leave. Shia, some associated with, politically sympathetic to Iran, like Kataib Hezbollah. And that is a constant possibility for provocation that the U.S. will immediately blame on Iran. So even with these retaliatory missile attacks, Iran fired 15 missiles at the main U.S. air base in Iraq, which is Ain al-Assad, where Iran says the attack that assassinated their general, Qasem Soleimani, came from. Now, it appears that these were deliberately designed, targeted to miss, to hit nothing. They supposedly 11 of them hit. There's no talk of any U.S. casualties. The U.S. is saying that some Iraqis who work with them on the base were killed. I've seen other reports from the Iraqi government saying that no Iraqis were killed. That's not clear at the moment. Still fog of war. Yeah. But it is clear that this attack was supposed to hit nothing. This is a symbolic gesture. This is to satisfy the infuriated domestic population of Iran and the Shias in Iraq and Lebanon and elsewhere around the world who are furious at this assassination. And Iran evoked Article 51 of the UN Charter, self-defense, and a proportionate response in doing so. This is just like the U.S. Cruise missile attacks against Damascus over the Douma chemical weapon hoax. They were also forewarned, choreographed, caused no loss of life or really significant damage. And this tells you how much of modern warfare is about dancing around each other, posturing, and saving face to a domestic audience. This is the Iranian government. They've now put the onus back on the U.S. They say, we don't want war, and we won't escalate further if you don't respond. And that's on Trump. And at the moment, it looks like Trump isn't going to. Because the truth is, neither the U.S. or Iran, at least in the forms of Trump and the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei, want war. Now, I believe there are plenty of people around Trump who do want war and do want U.S. regime change. John Bolton was tweeting about how this is the first stage. This assassination is just the first stage towards regime change in Iran. And there's certainly enough of his proteges still in the National Security Council and around. They're trying to position and provoke U.S. forces around Iran, using various excuses and justifications for Trump to doing so, specifically to arrange types of things that Iran cannot necessarily control, like attacks of Iraqi irregulars, militias, and movements, or in Yemen, the idea that Iran is completely proxy that they've ever trained and armed. Is the U.S. similarly responsible for every head-chopping Wahhabi? No, and they don't have direct control of them either. But they know this, and they're producing a situation where will lead a spiral of accidental escalations inevitably to war. Tonight it was avoided, but this face-saving gesture by the Iranian government, it's probably not the end of the score. They will probably seek to strike back at the U.S., get revenge in other ways, indirectly, covertly. We may see something in the future. This was immediate and a rather obvious and poor attempt to justify public demands for vengeance in Iran. But it's not the end of the story. It's a temporary pause on war between the U.S. and Iran. Tensions are still heating up. The Iraqi government is fragile. There's the possibility of renewed ethnic Sunni-Shia conflict in Iraq over this. There's the possibility that U.S. forces may move out of Baghdad only to hunker down in Iraqi Kurdistan in the north and seek to break up the Iraqi country. Where they think they have firm friends in the Kurds in the north, although they've thrown them under the bus before, just like they have other Kurds in Syria. And so it's a real mess. And Iraq right now is the main battlefield of influence. This is Iran and Nasrallah and Hezbollah and everyone has said this is about getting the U.S. out of Iraq and out of the region, out of the Middle East. That's how they want to take their revenge. And ironically, if Iraq does manage to kick out the U.S., something I don't see happening just at the moment, but even if he's just the Iraqi people or, most of the Shia population anyway, turns against the U.S., this is Soleimani winning. This was his goal. Yeah. Because if he gets the U.S. military out of Iraq, they can't support the occupation of the oil fields in East Syria either, because that's where they're supplied from. So the U.S. out of Iraq means the U.S. out of Syria, which means the U.S. essentially out of that part of the Middle East. And that is what Soleimani was fighting for. And this rash gesture by Trump and whoever pushed the idiot towards this around him may have actually handed Soleimani a victory in death that he wasn't achieving in life.
Somebody said that Soleimani died with a smile on his face. We'll get you out of here, but last question. I'm of the ideology that whatever Trump's position is, he has to go. He's merely definitely a player in the game when it comes to whether it be the intelligence community, the deep state, the military-industrial complex. What is your opinion? I mean, moving forward, is it really? I think there's only two choices to really get us out of that region, and that is Tulsi or Bernie, but what is your overall opinion about Donald Trump and what we need to do moving forward?
Okay, I love Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, I don't agree with everything she says, and I find a lot of common points with Sanders, even though after the last election and his buckling under to the rigging again of the DNC against his campaign with the Hillary Clinton campaign, I lost all respect for him, and I don't quite trust him completely on foreign affairs. I don't think either one of them have a chance of winning the U.S. election because I don't believe that American democracy will allow them to win. It is a managed political system. And I think interests in the DNC and in the corporate backers behind both parties will arrange that neither one of them can win. We've seen plenty against Gabbard, the anti-Semitic attempt to smear the Jewish Bernie Sanders as an anti-Semite is already contending. I don't think they can win. I'd love to see it. I don't think either one of them can win. And if the option is Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg in there, that's just another Hillary Clinton for me. And I hate to say it, but if we're going to have a neocon warmonger, which is what Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden are, no different than the people around Trump, I would rather myself have an incompetent one who makes strategic mistakes and alienates U.S. allies in Europe and around the world like Trump does, than a competent one like Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden that will lead the U.S. right into direct war with Russia like Hillary Clinton planned to do in Syria or elsewhere. Does this mean that Trump is a dove or anti-regime change like he talked about during the campaign? No, and I said at the time that was never likely. But if speaking from an American, an immigrant from the United States to another country and representing what I see as the interests of the rest of the multipolar world, if the interest is between an incompetent bad U.S. president and a competent bad U.S. president, which is the only two options I see, I'm sorry. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to, you really take a side in an election. But I'd rather see an incompetent Trump continue to win and erode U.S. power to inflict harm in the rest of the world than see Joe Biden win.
Wow. Yeah.
I hate to depress you with that's my two rules.
We're hoping for the best. We're hoping, Bernie Sanders seems to be likely to win. If it's all fair. If it's not fair, then you're right. And I very much fear you are right. But
I hope I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, Fiorella, I don't know. I'm going to give you some.
That Russian hat.
That's all I want in life. Okay, I know you have to go, but just really quickly, how involved do you think Israel and Netanyahu and those like him were involved in this situation, in this attack?
Okay, interestingly, both Israel and Saudi Arabia have been very quiet in the aftermath of all of this.
I know, right?
they made a very quiet statement, Netanyahu saying that he supports it, and that's it. That's because both Israel and Saudi Arabia realize that they could be targets. They will be targets of Iranian-backed allies in the region if it comes down to direct war. And supposedly Saudi Arabia has even sent an envoy to Trump to try to get him to chill down. I'm not sure I believe that. There are some people who were cheering when Qasem Soleimani was assassinated. ISIS and Al-Qaeda were definitely cheering. Israel and Saudi Arabia, even if they're quiet about it publicly, were definitely cheering. The neocons in the administration, whoever arranged this, whether it was Trump or some people who pushed him to him, it makes no real difference. We know Pompeo has been pushing for months to get Soleimani killed. We know that both George W. Bush and Obama had contingency plans and considered assassinating Soleimani themselves, but backed down because of the potential consequences. Not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't want to face the consequences. Right. Well, Trump is all too willing to have American boys and girls in uniform in the region face the consequences for him. But Israel and Saudi Arabia, publicly, they're very quiet. Inside, they're all rainbows and cheers and happiness.
Bush and Obama both pushed or talked about moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Didn't do it. Trump did. They talked about executing Soleimani. Didn't do it. Trump did. So what is next? What is the last thing that Iran can hit? You said that they can hit one more spot. What are you thinking they'll hit?
Well, a proportionate response would be the assassination of a U.S. political military figure. Yeah. But unfortunately, there is no one of Soleimani's status, both military genius-wise and political level of support. This is a guy who was shortlisted to be the next Iranian president. I mean, he's beloved in the country, and he's beloved by Shias around the world, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Yemen, all in Pakistan. There were protests against his assassination by Muslims in India, right? The U.S. didn't just declare war on Iran by assassinating Soleimani. And if it's, postponed, if they want to avoid a direct war, have no mistake, it's a direct declaration of war. Whether that war is covert and hybrid or overt really makes no difference. But they also declared war on the entire Shiite world. Again, on behalf of interests primarily for their partners for hegemony in the region, Saudi Arabia and Israel. And I really don't think they know what they've started. But if you've seen the funeral processions for Soleimani, the cries for solidarity out of Lebanon, in Iraq, they want to get the U.S. out of their country now. At least the majority Shia population does. I don't think they really have any understanding of what they've done. And exactly. With the neocons who push for these things, they didn't have any idea what they were doing with Iraq, with Libya. And when I say neocons, it's neocons, humanitarian interventionists on the Democratic side. They're both flip sides of the same coin. But the warmongers, the party of hegemony in the U.S., they don't ever really understand what they're doing in the world when they're lighting these powder kegs, but they have. And I think the end result of this is going to be a significant diminishment in U.S. influence even further in the Middle East.
Yeah. Mark, thank you for coming on and educating the conversation couch. Get out of here and go educate the rest of the world today. We appreciate you fitting us in, Mark.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much,
having me on. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the couch with you guys.
We'll be right back after this messages. Thank you, Mark Sloboda. Yes.
Yeah, so Fiorella was right. That's the point of the story. And I'm going to be right, Mark, because if I'm right, he's going to send me my Russian hat so I can wear it.
Oh, my
You got to get
Lord.
Bernie to win so I can get that Russian hat. That's all that matters.
I love having that guy on.
I know.
I love it. And you know, we're going to have Kevin Zeese back on, too, as well soon. He's going to come talk about the impeachment, some other things. We just touched base the other day. I love our foreign policy peeps. And you know what? We talk about this stuff a lot, and we're kind of laughing about this, what went on. It's very, you know, nobody knows the exact reasons for what happened and why it happened, but there are so many possibilities. And any way you look at it, Trump has got to go. He's just terrible when it comes to these decisions. Whether he was pushed by the deep state, the intelligence community, he made this move.
He's
This
just
was
a tool
a stupid
right now.
move.
Yeah, it was absolutely stupid. It was absolutely impulsive. And I mean, I think everybody can agree that it was impulsive. And I agree with especially the last point Mark made. I mean, this has backfired for the United States. This has created, like I said, more of a solidarity between not only Iraq and Iran, but also Syria and other groups in the Middle East that are coming together against U.S. imperialism. We have lost credibility. We have lost that sort of, kind of hold. And I think that as this progresses, we are going to continue losing more of that power.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is Donald, like what he said, too, about when we asked him, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. He'd rather have the incompetent warmongering. I mean, you know what? I mean, he's right. That's the whole thing is when people say, oh, we got to get rid of Trump. Oh, we got to get, but we get rid of him for what? What's going to replace Trump? The same thing that
Hillary
gave him
Clinton?
power? Yeah, I'm not going to do it. I'll just stay at home. I will not vote for Joe Biden over
I'm not
Donald
voting
Trump.
for anybody except a guy named Bernie Sanders or a woman named Tulsi Gabbard or I don't even think there's a Green Party candidate that I'm honestly approving of.
No.
So honestly, it's either those two or that's it. You know, my dog, 2020. She could bring world peace.
It's kind of funny because we see some people on there like Cameron Stark and a couple other people who normally aren't on watching us today on the Facebook.
140 on our YouTube combo couch.
And the MCSE, 174.
Over 200 on MCSE.
Yeah.
Let's see what's up with Twitch.
Twitch, we got our people hanging out. And if you haven't
3
got a
viewers
chance, guys,
on Twitch.
Sup, Twitch.
Go over to Rockfin, ROKFIN, sign up, help us out. Yes, we also have a GoFundMe going we're going to talk about. It's very important to get us out here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
We need the independent media going everywhere.
And
we
if Mark
listen to
is
everybody.
right, more reason for us to be there. Because this is a person that's in Russia. We're Russian bots. And so he's looking at America from the outside in. And it's a very different world when you look at America from an outsider perspective. And the fact is that since we didn't deal with election integrity in 2016, I don't know why everyone is so nonchalant about this situation we're already having in California. Right now, the majority of my Bernie friends and people that are working locally for Bernie here are focused on turning those independent voters into Democratic voters against their will almost, but telling them, please do this if you want to vote for Bernie, because if you don't do that, they're going to throw your vote out. And that's what I would encourage Tulsi supporters to do the same, because I don't for a second believe that your independent vote's going to count the same way as your Democratic vote. We don't live in a real democracy. Greg Palast has talked about that. You might as well get a provisional ballot if you're voting independent. It should not be that way, but I 100% think it's going to be that way.
Yeah.
It's all great. Bernie Sanders is doing wonderful. He's getting all the people. He's getting the right numbers. Those numbers are all great. But what I'm worried about is California and all the corrupt government that we have in here and the lack of election integrity.
Yeah, Sean Sobolewski on the MCSC network says he'll write in Jimmy Dore if that happens. And Mega Hello 76 says
all wars are bullshit.
All wars are bullshit. He says assassinate
awesome.
SpongeBob. I don't know if that was to talk to you, Johnny.
That was awesome.
But that's what's going on over there.
Assassinate.
All right, so is that anything else we have to talk about before we get on out of here, Johnny?
Fams, real quick, I want to show you this clip from CNN that I saw here. It's kind of like with my Fareed
Zakaria?
Fareed Zakaria.
Oh, my buddy. Today, Donald Trump became a president when he bombed the Afghanis. I'll never forget that. Fareed Zakaria.
That's what he said?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's see what he says here.
What is going to happen tomorrow? We don't know, because it's all, it all depends on the whims of one very impulsive man.
What about the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo? I mean, he is known for anti-Iran, his anti-Iran stance, and he is the president's ear in this conflict. What impact do you think he's had on this conflict?
I think it's a very good question, because as far as we can tell, Trump's basic instinct is more to pull back. He's criticized the endless wars. He doesn't want to keep troops in Syria, even in Afghanistan. And so it's puzzling as to why he has ratcheted up the pressure on Iran so dramatically at a time when things, as I say, were perfectly manageable with the Iran nuclear deal. And it does appear that on the first, he wanted to undo something that Obama had done. There was just a kind of anti-Obama instinct. Secondly, that the people he seems to trust, and that is Bibi Netanyahu in Israel and Mike Pompeo, are very anti-Iran and very hawkish. And in the absence of any formed geopolitical views of his own, he has essentially sort of adopted those. Yeah. But at the end of the day, whatever the reason and whoever advised him, he's the president, and he takes responsibility for this disarray of policy.
Yeah.
I have to say I agree with everything.
Thank you, Fareed. I appreciate your time.
As far as Donald Trump goes.
That's the point I was going to try and make. It was 100%. Weird that he said something that I was like, okay, I kind of agree with all that.
I mean, a clock, what is it? Like a broken clock strikes right.
It was right twice a day or whatnot and everything.
Like that,
I mean.
So is Tucker Carlson. I mean, Tucker Carlson has said, hey, we shouldn't be doing this, counteracting the majority of his, his neocon friends over there on Fox, like Tommy Lauren, saying, how dare you not want to assassinate a terrorist? Like, it's just like, this is, look, I think Trump's base is happy with him, his echo chamber base. And I made this point before. Trump has an echo chamber base that is happy with him, that believes everything he says and everything he does is amazing. Same as some of these Democrats have their echo chamber base that believe that whatever they say is the word of God. But I think the majority of Americans don't want any more war. And the majority of Americans who voted for him thinking he was at least better than Hillary are actually going to look somewhere else. And I think this actually could hurt him when it comes to independents, libertarians.
Absolutely.
It's an opportunity for Tulsi Gabbard to go in there and grab, and Bernie himself too, because he has been the only other anti-war candidate besides Tulsi. Like you said, those are the only two choices. Right now, if anybody makes an argument that Elizabeth Warren is a good second choice, I am going to tell you, you are a neoliberal, because there is no way you can stand against you can stand for war and go and change your mind, whether you call him a terrorist, whether you call him a dictator one day and the next day she goes back on her word. Yeah. You can't even stand up to Meghan McCain. Trump is gonna destroy you. And so anybody that tells me Elizabeth Warren is the second most progressive candidate and all those still pushing for her, no. Bottom line, it's Bernie or Tulsi or that's it. That's it.
I do want to just kind of say one thing about Tucker Carlson. I don't agree with all his views. But when it comes to war and the deep state, he has been pretty good pushing this stuff, talking about this stuff.
He's anti-war.
He talked about. He goes, the deep state. Why are we going to listen to them now? They were wrong about Iraq, Syria,
That's what I'm
Libya.
saying.
This is Tucker Carlson, who once said that immigrants make our country dirtier. I mean, this is messed up comments. I didn't agree with Antifa going to his house.
But those people exist in Europe. I mean, there are a lot of people with Tucker Carlson's mentality in places like Germany, for instance, because they're afraid.
Because there's a lot of Middle Eastern immigrants going over there. Because of what? Because of the U.S. wars.
Exactly. That's the whole thing. Well, how can you make the point that they're dirtier when you know that you understand the mechanisms of why they're coming here?
Well, because he gets paid to go on there and placate to a base. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, but the whole thing is, when it comes to his war mentality or his ideologies on war, it's very different than a lot of the people that are on his network. Because a lot of people on his network, people like Laura Ingraham, that guy on Fox and Friends, I don't even know, they're pushing for what Donald Trump did as a good move, saying what he did was kill a terrorist, that Soleimani was bad, whatnot, and he needed to go. So, I mean, for Tucker Carlson to push back against his own network's ideology of being pro-neocon war, I kind of have to give him some props. once again, not agreeing with everything he says, but at least somebody out there in the mainstream media is talking it like it is. Because nobody on mainstream, on MSNBC is talking that news. Nobody on CNN is talking that news.
No.
I mean, they're supportive of all these people. You heard Seth Moulton, all these congressmen, these Democrats that are saying that he was our enemy. Guess what? He didn't need to be our enemy. We created
We
him.
were in a place we didn't have to be in, and we are still in there, and they're telling us to leave, and that's all they want.
Yeah.
That's all they want. They want us to go, so let's go. All right.
Scary times. So
Real quick, remember I was telling you about those 2 videos I wanted to show y'all, and I wanted you to live
let's
refute. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, fine.
Let's do it. Let's take a look.
Okay, so today Senate leadership talked to reporters earlier today. It was I don't know, a few hours ago, around 3 or 4 p.m. our time. So let's watch this. This is what's his name? Fucking hold on. Let me switch the screen here for you guys can see. Hold on. I know it might lag. It totally lagged. Hold on.
Pasta's wrong. I'm right.
Not really.
Yeah, really.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Check. Okay, cool. So you guys see it? Okay. So here is, what's his name? Mitch McConnell?
Mitch McConnell.
Okay.
Obviously, that is
Oh, God.
of calling witnesses was addressed. Obviously, that is the most contentious part of one of these proceedings, and that'll be addressed at that time and not before the trial begins. With regard to getting the papers, it is a rule of impeachment in the Senate that we must receive the papers. It continues to be my hope that the Speaker will. The House argued that this was an emergency. They needed to act quickly. The President was such, apparently, from their point of view, such a danger to the country that they needed to really rush this through. And then they sat on the papers now for 3 weeks. I hope that'll end this week. I understand there's considerable discomfort among Senate Democrats, some of them expressing that to some of you, over the continued delay in sending it on over.
So that's pretty accurate, right? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, she hasn't
Well,
sent
I'm
them
sorry, I
over.
was falling asleep as he was talking.
No,
Yeah,
it's
no.
true.
They just said the turtle on the let's hear from the turtle.
Turkey. He looks like a turkey.
The turkey Neff.
Turkey
Somebody called him the turtle. Mitch
Anyway,
McConnell.
yeah, no, but he's right. Nancy Pelosi hasn't sent anything.
It's theater.
It's all a show.
Theater.
You know, they
It's
should
so
have their own
disgusting.
Golden Globes.
Really, we're worried about tensions escalating with Iran. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about serious war in the Middle East, and yet they're putting on this theater when it comes to the impeachment
And
of
that
Donald
goes
Trump.
for the Democrats too. They're
Oh
like,
my God, they're so bad.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay, so then here's Chuck the Schmuck.
My
Oh,
guy.
God. Really?
So we can roast him.
Yes.
All right, it's like the later
Very,
part
very good job.
where someone questions. Hold on. It's right before he
I'm
walks
not
off.
talking about any conversations I've had. I do know where public sentiment is. I do know where fairness is. And I also know when it's the weight of the Constitution, it weighs on shoulders in many different ways than in a normal type proceeding where people would just go along with Trump. Admittedly, they're afraid of him. Taylor. Yes.
Okay, here it is. According to the War Powers Resolution,
Yeah.
during the Obama administration, there were 571 drone strikes.
Yeah.
Constitution gives the Congress the power to make war for a very good reason. If you read the Federalist Papers, if you read your history, one of the things they were most afraid of was a president, a chief executive, who would grab too much power and rush to go to war. And the bottom line is very simple.
What about the drone strikes from Obama?
I describe it in 2 words.
Look at him.
Erratic and just wrong. And he's impulsive. I describe it in 2 words: erratic and impulsive.
I forgot the word. Wrong.
Every foreign policy endeavor this man has been involved in, we're worse off. North Korea, photo ops, nice little love letters. North Korea now, it looks like, has an ICBM and many more nuclear weapons. Syria, we're in much weaker shape in Syria than we've been before.
Notice
Oh,
the
really?
word weaker.
Really?
Every time he's confronted Putin, Putin is cleaned his clock.
Okay.
What the fuck does that mean?
I don't know. Can you stop this?
I can't. I mean,
Because Johnny goes, what the fuck does that mean?
we are weaker in Syria because we're less involved in their affairs, which is how it should be. No one's defending Trump here. I mean, Obama and Trump both are leading drone strikes. In fact, Obama mimicked Trump, or Trump mimicked Obama's drone strikes. Obama is the reason why Trump was able to go in there
Exactly.
and do that. This is all like, I mean, it's either way. Like some of these, people like Mitch McConnell want to wash their hands off of anything Donald Trump has done as if he's this innocent little.
Yeah.
But the same thing goes for people like Chuck the Schmuck who want to pretend Obama is the Lord and Savior, and that's just not the case. All of these people could be seen as neocons because they've gone and increased our military presence in the Middle East.
They have, and just as Dr. Tilda said, Obama had 8 whistleblowers jailed. And Glory Jones says, "Oh, Mr. Schumer, would you like those platitudes medium or medium rare?"
Medium rare, please.
I mean, because the reporter's sitting there asking, "What about Obama? What about Obama?"
Pretty much.
Obama did over 500 drone strikes. Well, Obama was a Democrat, and your Trump is a Republican. So Trump is just, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, wrong. Give me a break.
You know what Frederick Murphy said? He says it's a retirement home for warmongers.
It is. It is. That's what Congress is. We have to get these people, removed. No, it is scary, the people that are running our country right now. Look at that. Chuck the Schmuck Schumer. This is the leading Democrat in the Senate, ladies and gentlemen. The leading Democrat, the most powerful Democrat in the world is this donkey with the glasses hanging down who can't even get his words right. And
the other donkey is Nancy Pelosi, who can't even deliver a set of papers.
Wait, our values unite us, Fiorella. Nance. Oh, my Lord.
Give her a call.
God, we got to get rid of these people. Johnny, anything else you want to... Oh, wait, let's go. Here we go.
Okay.
Let's get the live human snowman.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Please, here he is. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you...
I want y'all to roast him.
Mr. Pompeo.
God.
Okay, so today, earlier in the day, earlier, Mike Pompeo had a press release, answered some strikes, and this is how he starts the new year with, because I don't think he's done a press conference like this. So let me show you how he starts the new year. I
want to express my condolences to him. His service to America was noble. As a member of Congress, we worked together on pro-life issues during my time in Congress. I know lots of you have questions about the Middle East and Iraq. I'll certainly take some questions today. But first, too, I want to offer my condolences to the people of Australia for the tragic loss of life and property caused by the devastating wildfires across that region. America's thoughts and prayers are with the victims, their families, and the emergency service personnel putting themselves in harm's way.
Condolences.
And the same goes, too, for the dozens of U.S. firefighting personnel who are standing side by side with our Australian friends fighting the flames together. As I said when I was in Sydney just this past summer, we have a truly unbreakable alliance. They are great friends, and we're happy to be able to help Aussies in this time of need.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Staying in Asia, we noted the appointment of Liu Weining as the new head of the Hong Kong Chinese Central Government Liaison Office. He's expressed hopes that Hong Kong will return to the, quote, right path, end of quote. The right path, as I've said before, is for the Chinese Communist Party to honor its commitments made to Hong Kong in the Sino-British Joint Declaration filed at the United Nations, a commitment that guarantees the territory's independent rule of law and freedoms that the Chinese living on the mainland, unfortunately, do not enjoy.
Jeez.
The United States will continue to work with Hong Kong and the Chinese Communist Party officials
he hits all
to protect human rights and fundamental freedoms in Hong Kong and to promote Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy. In Afghanistan, there's an aspect of that conflict that deserves more attention, and that is the Islamic Republic of Iran's involvement there. Iran has refused to join the regional and international consensus for peace and is, in fact, today, actively working to undermine the peace process by continuing its long global efforts to support militant groups there. Most people know about Iran's proxy networks in the Arab world, but the regime also has a relationship with the Taliban and related groups, such as the Haqqanis, the Tora Bora, and the Mullah Jardula group. The Taliban's entanglement with Iran's dirty work will only harm the Afghanistan peace process.
Oh my God.
A couple items here in the hemisphere. In Venezuela, I want to thank and congratulate Juan Guaido on his re-election as the president of Venezuelan National Assembly.
Hey, congratulations, Juan Guaido, says Pete Buttigieg.
The Maduro regime's campaign of arrests, intimidation, and bribery could not derail Venezuela's
When you're wrong,
democracy,
stay
nor
wrong.
could its use of military forces to physically bar the National Assembly from accessing the parliament building. I applaud how Venezuela's political parties came together to support Guaido's re-election. The United States will continue to support President Guaido and the Venezuelan people, and we will continue to rally all other freedom-loving nations across the globe to do that same thing.
Freedom-loving
nations, Johnny.
Because
you know what freedom-loving nations stand for? It basically stands for, nations that
Empire.
bend over for fucking the U.S. empire.
Okay, first of all, he's saying Iran is involved with the Taliban. The guy they just killed was directly involved with getting rid of these terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So for them to say that Iran is like involved in the Taliban is the complete opposite, considering this guy has been hailed by the people in the Middle East for getting rid of those terrorist groups that we created.
Yeah, that we
That
funded.
is so unnerving. It is so.
Let's not forget that it was Saudi nationals that bombed or flew into the World Trade
We are
Center.
friends with the Taliban.
Yeah, no.
In other words. And then don't even get me started on Venezuela.
Well, I mean, GEC 111112 says Super Chat contribution says, I call him Pompous Mike. And he is pompous as can be. And it just seems when they're wrong, they stay wrong. They keep regurgitating the same type of bullshit, this freaking platitudes
Like, what are they talking
just these
about?
generalizations of what it really is and just painting this picture that is not true. And it's disgusting. So, I mean,
Guaido being reelected for, like, what is
Pete Buttigieg just congratulated Juan Guaido and said that Maduro was wrong. And Michael Santiago says, disagree. Agree with the impeachment or not. Nancy is playing her best card right now on impeachment. She can hold on to those papers forever, and Trump will never be vindicated by a puppet GOP Senate. Yeah. Sorry, Michael Santiago Miguel. Completely wrong. It makes them look like a bunch of donkeys. It makes them look weak. They're not even sending it on over and stuff.
It helps.
That whole process is helping them. Donkey.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, real quick. I got to play this part where he.
Oh God, really?
Listen.
Why are you doing
The
this
Western
to me?
Hemisphere should be a hemisphere with freedom everywhere. I also want to highlight the work of the OAS, which has been an instrumental
The OAS.
tool in moving the region in that direction. It's an example of truly outstanding, effective multilateralism.
Really?
Secretary General Luis Almagro is the leader we need for the OAS to continue proactively addressing the central challenges facing the region, promoting democracy, upholding human rights, advancing security, and fostering economic development throughout it. I have more to say about the OAS and the multilateral reform in the coming weeks. On the theme of basic freedoms, I want to commend members of Bahrain's Council of Representatives for their January 2nd statement, in which they expressed deep concern over the inhumane and painful conditions to which Uyghur Muslims in China are subjected. Bahrain is recognizing what I've been saying for months. The Chinese Communist Party is committing mass human rights violations and abuses against Uyghurs,
human rights
ethnic
violations.
Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, and other Muslims held in detention in Xinjiang. We're happy with what Bahrain did, and we ask all countries, particularly those belonging to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Arab League, to denounce the Chinese Communist Party's brutal treatment of Uyghurs, which is part of the party's broader war on faith.
Right. Look,
Yeah.
we talked about this whole thing with the Uyghurs and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. There is Wahhabi ideology spread through that region. And yes, China is going down with a strong fish, but once again, they're not talking about that problem that they had. You know why? Because it's from direct funding of the United States. We fund the Saudi Arabian government, the monarchy, and they go out and spread the Wahhabism everywhere else. That's directly related to us to what's going on in China, in West China, and Xinjiang. And it's disgusting that Pompeo is talking about this. Also about the OAS, another freaking fugazi.
It's like he was reading straight from the regime change playbook.
Yeah.
Like he's literally reading straight from there. And then when he lied about Guaido being president, he's prime minister. He has like a year to try to oust Maduro. He's completely lying about that. Completely lying.
And we're the Trumpers that aren't saying anything when he gave them the $41 million. He gave it to Guaido. If you're going to be a nationalist of sorts, then aren't you going to use the money back home? I bet you Flint, Michigan could have used that money to help them with their water situation. Super chat contribution from GEC 11112 again with a nice cup of coffee or tea or juice. Larry Janney said, "Read that teleprompter, bitch." To freaking Mike Pompeo.
Right.
The Lightning Hunter said, "Democracy." Lugetta Sally said, "Empire gone wild." And Dr. Tilda said, "Too many Big Macs, Mr. Pompeo."
All right, so
too many Big Macs.
The reason I wanted to show all that is just to show the BS propaganda that Mike Pompeo and all the Democrats, all our elected leaders, are doing. So we really need to get our asses out there and vote for progressive people who are not going to take corporate money and have their values lined up.
And it's
correctly.
just not even corporate money at this point. Either you're pro-peace and you're pro-people, or you're pro-war and you're pro the oligarchy. That's it. There's no Democrat or Republican. You're going to vote for actual peace for the working people, or you're going to vote to keep the oligarchs rich through more war. Because we're an empire. That's it. We are a giant military base. That's all we are. And either you're going to stand against that and for actual freedom, or you're going to be another tool, another cog in their little well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And that's that. So we have a very big chance of being able to do that.
Well, we got to like, share, subscribe, and share these videos, share independent media, because let me tell you something, it's scary. There are everyday people who are working, who are not in this echo chamber, who are not politically knowing what's going on. They're just going to hear that, repeat that, and go to the ballot boxes and going, yeah, I'm voting for democracy over here. These are, we're out there being the policemen of the world, and we got to stop the evilness of the Guaidos, the Soleimanis, all that shit. And right now they're just being led down into death and destruction, and this is getting to be really dangerous times for the United States. Johnny.
Glory Jones says, send the neocons to Iraq 2020.
Send them there. If you support this war, then grab a fucking gun.
I want her on the front lines.
The Democrats are so bad, they've enabled this shit from the get-go. Just like in this last military budget. Ro Khanna, Tulsi Gabbard, they led the way. They wanted to remove the AUMF. They wanted to make sure that no funding goes towards Iran. Nancy Pelosi was verbally against this stuff. Okay? She didn't get behind these progressives to get this stuff done. So they're not the opposition party of Donald Trump. So let's stop acting like they are. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck the Schmuck Schumer, they gotta go, ladies and gentlemen. They gotta go. And on the show, Shahid Buttar will be here to talk to us.
And Shahid
gotta
Buttar
support Shahid.
Is against war. He was, retweeting mine and a bunch of other anti-war sentiments today. He's completely in opposition to people like Nancy Pelosi. So we need to support our progressive candidates.
Shout out to Jai Gabbard. Real quick, this is the last video I'm playing. It's Tulsi on Fox.
How many times has she been saying this, guys?
2 years ago. Almost 3.
Jesus Christmas. She's been saying it forever.
Here now exclusively, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, a 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, combat veteran, and major in the Army National Guard. She is campaigning tonight in New Hampshire. Thank you very much, Congresswoman Gabbard. Good to have you here tonight.
Thank you, Martha. Appreciate the opportunity.
So obviously you think this is heading in a very bad direction. What do you think happens next?
Well, we've got to be clear-eyed about the situation that we are in, that inching closer, actually more than inching, speeding towards an all-out war with Iran would make the wars that we've seen in Iraq and in Afghanistan look like a picnic. It will be far more costly in lives, American lives, and American taxpayer dollars, and all towards accomplishing what goal? What objective? I think that's really at the crux of this decision that President Trump made to take out Soleimani. We've got to make sure that our commander-in-chief is making decisions that are based on the best interests of the safety and security of the American people, our own national security, and that's not what's happened here.
All right, so put yourself for a moment in the White House, in the Oval Office. You have a situation where tankers are being hit. You have a situation where an American contractor is killed, and then you have the embassy that we built. It is sovereign United States territory under attack. What would you do?
will actually work to de-escalate the situation. We've got to recognize that these things didn't just happen overnight. These things began with Trump's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear agreement, choosing to move away from diplomacy, further escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran, escalating crippling sanctions, a modern-day siege against Iran, sending more and more troops to the region, further escalating tensions, and designating Iran's military as a terrorist organization, further escalating this conflict with Iran, something that's never been done by any country anywhere in the world before.
Right.
And this is where he has not put the national security interests of our country first. I just want to finish this because there's two main points here of how he has undermined our national security. Number one, every day that goes on that Iran is not in the nuclear agreement and just, I think yesterday announced that they're no longer abiding by any restrictions that were part of that agreement. That means they're closer to developing a nuclear weapon capability, putting us and the world at risk. And number two, because our forces in Iraq, for example, are no longer going to be focusing on defeating and ensuring that al-Qaeda and ISIS are not allowed a resurgence. Our commander there yesterday just said, we're not doing that anymore because now our troops have to focus on Iran, allowing ISIS and al-Qaeda to create and mount a resurgence that further puts us and our national security at risk.
Plenty of people who agree with you, and then there are people on the other side of the equation who say when you are presented with intelligence, and members of Congress are going to hear what that intelligence was, I imagine on Wednesday, or at least a little bit more information on these imminent threats, and you don't take the target of opportunity to take this person out who is behind those threats to American citizens and American military, you take a risk of having people then turn back to you and say, how could you have allowed our people, our military, to be made vulnerable by this attack when you knew you had the opportunity to take this guy out? And I want you to listen for just a second to Sergeant Bartlett, who has been a frequent guest on this program, when he talked to us the other night about the IED that was Iranian-made that blew him up and changed his life. And
the point I wanted to make is that I wanted to show like how Tulsi, is Tulsi's poise in responding to this reporter who gives a
very pro-war agenda.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you want to show the rest of that?
Yeah,
I'm trying to interested and intrigued and see what she's going to say and how Tulsi's going to answer.
Yeah, exactly.
and took away his friends. Watch this.
It's retribution for guys like this. Sergeant First Class Brian Mancini, dead at the hands of Iranian, past his injuries. Sergeant William J. Brooks, Corporal Bishop, Robert Siddham. All these guys are their friends, have died at the hands of the Iranians in this current regime, and some to the Quds Force, and Soleimani at his hands. So for us, it's retribution.
So given the opportunity to take him out and prevent further attacks against men and women like that, how do you not take it?
Oh, look, Martha, I'm the only candidate running for president who's actually served in uniform in Iraq during the height of the war. I understand very clearly both what happened and the situation, the challenges that we are dealing with there now. But here's the key, that as Commander-in-Chief, the Commander-in-Chief should not be making decisions based on who is a bad guy or even who has blood on their hands. The Commander-in-Chief needs to make a decision about what is in the best national security interests of our country. And I just gave you the two biggest examples of how Trump's decision has undermined our national security and made the American people less safe. That is at the crux of what is wrong with the decision that Donald Trump made, and why it's so critical that we have a commander-in-chief who has experience and understanding in both foreign policy and our national security to make and with the foresight to see what the consequences of those decisions will be. This is why I'm running for president, to bring the experience that I have to fulfill that responsibility and to serve as commander-in-chief.
Everybody respects your service and your ability to discuss it from your own perspective, from your experiences there as well. I just want to play this. This is a soundbite from the Hezbollah leader, Nasrallah, threatening Americans and warning U.S. forces.
When the American soldiers and officers' coffins start moving to the United States, as they came vertically, they will go back horizontally. Then Trump and his administration will recognize that they really lost the region and they will lose the election.
interpret that threat for us, in practical terms. What do you expect to happen now?
Look, it's hard to say with specifics, but I think that this statement is further affirmation of how this step that Trump took is a serious escalation of this war that further puts the American people and our troops in the region at risk. This is why I am calling for our troops to get out of Iraq and Syria now, because the longer that they stay there, the more likely it is that we will find ourselves entrenched into another endless quagmire of a war with no one able to define what does winning look like, what does victory look like, what are we actually trying to accomplish, and how does it actually serve the best interests of our people and of our safety and security.
Congresswoman Gabbard, thank you very much. Good to speak with you tonight. Thanks.
She always brings it back to the best interests of the American people, because when you're president, you can't just let yourself get emotional about one particular thing and react impulsively, which is what the Pentagon did. And she realizes that, and she's seeing that. But I want to point out, they are cherry picking here, because we just showed one of the leaders in Hezbollah completely contradict that statement made, saying we're not going to go after civilians, we're going to go after the certain targets of Americans, and that's exactly what they did. So I don't know where they're getting this. I mean, as Mark Sloboda pointed out, there is a domestic insurgents in Iran, understandably so, angry with Americans and the United States for going after one of their heroes. So they might be asking for our demise. They might be cheering on, get rid of these Americans, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Now, the Iranian leaders responded, and the Iraqi leaders have responded with more tact than what, they could have, because it's not equal. I mean, it's symbolic. And so to say that, that these people are going to target us and they're going to go and attack our leaders, it's just, we don't even know who this contractor was, or we don't know anything. They could have been a CIA plant set out to do. I mean, we really don't know. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's like that gentleman who was showing the pictures of his friends. I would have said, well, why are we there to begin with in the first place? And I'm saying, if we'd never gone in there, we'd never have to worry. If we minded our own business, we'd be fine. If we weren't going out there seeking out to take all the natural resources from these countries in the Middle East, we wouldn't have these problems. So that's all I got to say to that. I also want to say to Nicholas Locke and Orson Jacques, who are going crazy about my Chinese comments, we do have a video with Mark Sloboda, who was on the show, and we talk about what's going on with the Uyghurs, whatnot. Mm-hmm. If you have information that you'd like to share to debunk my personal opinions, please send it to theconvocouch@gmail.com. I am open to see any information you have or what information you got, and I will look at it, please. I am open to being persuaded, but from the research I have done and what I have seen, I don't share the same sentiment as you.
Any sort of pro-democracy, pro-OAS, those groups are in there to promote U.S. imperialism. They are not there to promote actual democracy. If we wanted to promote actual democracy, we would stay away from these countries, focus on our own democracy, our own elections, and then maybe I would start believing that we want to promote democracy. When you hear people like Pompeo echo the same sentiments that these establishment Democrats are pushing for pro-democracy groups that are created by these NGOs and NEDs in China, then you understand that this is the establishment, the oligarchy, the military-industrial complex wanting to maintain hold over the U.S. empire, and that's what it comes down to at this point. So.
Yeah. I mean, and when she talked about the NED, all these people on the Hong Kong Democracy Advisory Board, which we signed this whole thing. Ro Khan, I was upset him. He was one of the co-sponsors. They're all from the NED, and the NED has just been known to cause problems. They are considered CIA light by some. But however, if you have information about the Uyghurs you want to share, that is fine.
And that's not to say that there's not reason for these people to be protesting and uprising. However, a lot of these groups, what they do is they take a situation and they exacerbate it, and they take advantage, and they create these sort of conflicts between. That's what we've done in the Middle East. We do it everywhere else too.
And what did Joe Biden do at the last debate? We talked about it. He started saber rattling with World War III with China, talking about the Uyghurs, talking about that we need to move 60%. Me and Obama tried to do it. We want to move 60% of our Navy to the South China Sea. We want to hit them with sanctions.
Yeah.
You're threatening war with a major nuclear power. Okay, and that's what I've always been afraid of. So when I heard a lot of this talk about China, the Uyghurs, what's going on, I was always been intrigued and kept my eyes open. But please, if you have more information to give us, give it to us. We'll take a look at it. We'll make our assessment from there.
And
sanctions
are an act of war, and I'm glad she mentioned that.
Yeah, she does.
So.
We talked about it when she came here in this studio.
Modern day siege.
Yeah. Anything else to get us out of here with, Johnny?
Apparently breaking news. Mark Sloboda retweeted. It says that Iranian television says 80 American soldiers were killed in strikes on base in Iraq, despite the U.S. saying there were no American casualties. Now, what if Iranian TV is just saying that
to appease them?
To appease the Iranian.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's wait till tomorrow.
How did we go from 0 to 80?
Exactly.
See, I mean, once again.
That I don't buy.
And then the other thing that Mark retweeted is that all 180 passengers aboard the Boeing 737 plane crash in Tehran are dead. Plane went down into ball of flames, Iranian media report.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Some people said that Iranian military could have been freaked out and fired on it, false flagged themselves, of everything going on. Maybe they thought it was, Americans coming to attack them. Who knows? The case may be. But, a lot of stuff's going to unfold tomorrow. Yeah.
All right.
Tomorrow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long day. Remember, this Thursday is still Canada Day. We have Rachel Rossi coming into the studio. But before that, we have Lauren Ashcraft as well. She'll be on the show at 1 and 2. We have that going on every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 and 2. We're going to be interviewing with 2 candidates and having some fun with the fam because it's about to kick in. The primaries are about to start. And if Mark Sloboda's right, Tulsi and Bernie have their goose cooked and have no chance. That's going to be scary.
We need to be on the streets. We need to already have a plan in place. By the way, donate to our GoFundMe. We really, really need you guys to help us get to Nevada, Iowa, Florida, maybe somewhere else if we can make it.
Yeah.
We really, really want to be there. We really want to get there. Johnny has the GoFundMe. Maybe you can put the link in there. But we're doing pretty well, but we have less than a month to really make this happen, and we need all the help we can get.
Yeah.
I have a good amount of followers on Twitter. Follow them, donate $1. We'd be set.
Yeah.
So, just
help us out. Ever since the missiles
whatever.
Been flying, everybody stopped. And
yeah.
we were moving at such a good pace. World War III was threatened, and everybody stopped. Well, no World War III. We talked to Mark Sloboda.
Oh, and speaking of that,
let's get back on it.
We did get to like 1,000, so thanks to everybody for that.
Yeah, we want to thank you guys who have so far donated. We really appreciate it. It's always appreciated.
On the couch.
Yeah,
thank you so much to all the people.
1,372. Anonymous gave us 100 most recently.
Thank you guys.
50.
Thank you to Howard Gold for the big donation.
Yeah.
It's always appreciated.
Awesome.
Todd Jones.
Todd.
Todd
get out
mad.
there, guys. Help us out. Should we close with the video, John?
Yes.
We're going to close for the video for Pasta Jardula.
And Fiorella.
Johnny Sue on those 1s and 2s.
Thank you so much,
Good
guys.
night. See you tomorrow.
We love you. See you tomorrow.
We want to cover key primaries in as many states as possible. But in order to do this, travel, take off days of work, go to events, and buy new equipment to get us top-notch work, we've decided to start a GoFundMe.
Our goal is to raise at least $10,000 for the first half of the primary season through March. Afterwards, we will evaluate what needs to be done for the last half of the primary and possibly into the election. This will include airfare, travel, equipment, accommodations, and other traveling expenses.
We live in Los Angeles and the rent is too damn high, but we want to be able to cover as much as possible. Anything happens during the voting time, we will be there to break the news and bring you live updates. We don't just sit on the couch. We follow the action.
And as we've said, this election is so important, if not the most important election of our time, and we can't afford to miss it or not be there in case any shenanigans go down.
So fans, we humbly ask for your help in any way support you can give it. Donate, help us cover these events, and talk to the people and politicians. You already know that we ask the right questions. For those who donate, we'll put your name down in the credits and show a big thank you to you. We'll post the link down below.
Thanks again for your support. It truly means the world to us.
And it is always appreciated on the couch. And please, like, share, and subscribe from Pasta
and Fee
and Johnny Sue on those 1s and 2s.
Convo out.
Help us out.
increases in voter turnout have been found in states that require photo IDs to vote.
With some people still in line to cast their ballots. Many Brooklyn residents who thought they were registered showed up to vote, only to find their names were not on the list.
We need to count all provisional ballots. And say, shut the fucking election down. We deny people the right to vote.
Next speaker.